So welcome everybody to another edition of our JoyScorePodcast with our happiness and addiction coach, Connie. And today we're going to be talking about shadow work, and that's a new term for me. So I want to jump off by asking Connie, what is shadow work? What does that mean?
Well, shadow work is like the parts of you that aren't necessarily seen. So it's like the bits in the shadow. And so the process of becoming aware of those and feeling them and then releasing them can elevate you to a whole new level of peace and fulfillment, understanding, aliveness, etc.
Oh, so it's not seen to others and not seen to yourself, or you know it, but you kind of keep it under wraps.
Well, it's usually not seen at first. So, I mean, others might see it, but it's like it can be seen. Like once it's seen, then it's seen, but it's still your shadow. But it can be worked through.
Cool. So can you give us an example of what might be in somebody's shadow?
So the three, like, it usually comes from like the three core wounds, which is not feeling good enough, a lack of trust, and like fear of abandonment. And so for example, like one of my shadows is not feeling good enough, which is a very common wound, and that shows itself as perfectionism.
Interesting. And these seem like very primal, like, you know, the sorts of things that it just strikes me as like it comes from an early point in your life, it would seem. Your early experiences would maybe shape some of this stuff. Is that true? Or
yeah, so like my feeling of not feeling good enough, it's like come from my mother, who she got that from her father, who got it from his mother. You know, it passes down until you become aware of it and you're willing to feel it, face it, to heal it, to release it.
Feel it, face it, to heal it, to release it. So basically, these things can be remediated. It's the idea that you recognize you have this issue, you face it head on, and then you kind of do the work necessary to get over it, right?
Can you say it again? Feel it, face it,
heal it, release it. I actually just came up with that. That's pretty good, isn't
it? That's the title of your book.
Yeah, there you go. Coming, written from the sauna.
Better write it quick.
Because this is an example. Like me getting annoyed about the heat here is part of my shadow, because like I want things to be perfect all the time. You know, so that's like, but me realizing that I'm able to like bring the awareness to it, and then like send that part of me love and be like, look, things aren't always perfect. Like sometimes like things are a bit more challenging, a bit more, but it's like, what part of me needs more love right now?
Right. Interesting. Is this stuff that you can always do for yourself, or you do for others as well? Like potentially help other people with their shadows, sort of making them aware of it and that?
Yeah. So in my coaching, I help people become aware of their shadow, and then do some healing work that normally like going back to some part of their childhood. And you can do this through guided meditation, hypnosis, and to go back to a certain time in your childhood where that core wound came from, and then like rewrite a different story and like send love and some healing to that part of you. And then that shadow is going to show up less in your current, life.
So what would be the strategies for healing each different one of these elements, like good enough, trust,
abandonment,
fear of abandonment? Yeah. What would be the strategies like for each one of those that you tell yourself?
Well, for not feeling good enough, like it's the practice of self-love. So the affirmations like I am enough, and looking into the mirror, say sending yourself love, and like it's the practice of that, because we learn through repetition. So that's how you rewire a new way of being and a new way of thinking. And then fear of abandonment, it's sending love to yourself, but also it's the first stage in any healing is awareness. So if you have a fear of abandonment, that might show up in relationships as jealousy or like clinginess, or holding on to relationships that actually are no longer serving you and people, or and then like, so becoming aware of it, and then you can not base your decisions on that fear, rather than that you're basing your decisions on a place of realism. Right. And then the not being
that
able
one, sorry, just sticking with that one, there is a fear maybe that if you lose the relationship, your whole world will crumble and you'll be destitute and and you just get carried away with the what ifs, when reality is, you'll be okay. You just won't be in that particular relationship anymore, and you'll carry on breathing and living and all that good stuff. So I get it. And then trust was the last one. Sorry, interrupted. Trust.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Trust. So trust, you can edge yourself out, like into trusting people like that little bit more. Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to give all my trust to this person or this scenario right now necessarily. Like, you can just make small steps. Yeah. And then like practicing that, and then like realizing, oh, okay, it's not actually as bad as I first thought, because we learn through experience.
Right. So baby steps on the trust fund. Take baby steps. Validate that the outcome of those baby steps was, positive, and then take another little baby step and build upon it.
Yeah. I mean, recently I jumped out of an airplane, and that took a lot of trust. And I was thinking like, yeah, I mean, that's what a great metaphor for life, really. Like, that's, and that's what some people actually do to face their fears of trust.
Right.
Jump to actually go skydiving, because that takes a huge leap of faith.
Yeah, very nice.
And then when you land on the ground, you realize, okay, I did it, and if I can do that, I can do a lot more.
Nice. So when it comes to all of these things, you sort of said feel it and face it. I think that natural sort of defense mechanisms make people run away from the things that they're frightened of, right? So if you have one of these thoughts or feelings, you probably throughout your life built up a lot of defense mechanisms around it. That's just who I am, and blah blah blah, you know what I mean, rather than actually like attacking it. And I think the longer you leave,
not to attack it, I mean, like, it's more like
face it. Yeah, that's my
language,
but
because it's about not shaming it. It's about not shaming that part of yourself, however you feel like, and it's not a bad thing,
Right. So you've got these things. If you potentially run away from them or don't deal with them, in my experience, things that are negative like that get bigger. The shadows get bigger, I imagine, right? They become more fearful, and maybe more ingrained. Like, you just accept it, and therefore, it becomes a part of your life, as opposed to something that you believe you can change.
Yeah.
So do you feel people can change at any age? Do you feel that like you need to do this work at a certain point in your life, or do you think it's harder the longer you leave it, the older you get with some of these things?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it is probably harder the longer you leave it, because we learn through repetition and practice. And if you've been very practiced at being someone that is judgmental or jealous, like that then becomes part of your identity, and then it's like part of like your essence. So to take yourself out of that is harder because you've built up this structure. But they say like it's easier to change before you're 35, but that doesn't mean that, oh, okay, I'm 40, then I should give up. Don't bother. No, definitely, always can change. It's depending on how willing you are to face yourself and to do the work, because it's not easy. It does take work, but the payoff and the reward is immense.
Yeah. Do you think there's an element where people don't even realize that it's not working for them? You know, this feeling of like perfectionism. They think, oh, it's a good thing. I'm a perfectionist. I work really hard. I deliver perfect results every time. And they don't even realize that it's taking like a toll on themselves or the relationship or stuff like that. So I guess there is a realization of the problem as a sort of early step as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just did a YouTube video about perfectionism, actually, so we can put it in the links if you like. But it's about like, I used to think, oh, it's a good thing because it makes me successful and makes me do things very precisely. But perfectionism is bad when it involves like self-flagellation and that negative component, like when you're not 100% perfect. So like fueling your decisions based on compassion and love and support and encouragement is what's key in perfectionism. And that's similar in all the other core wounds too. And a lot of people are in the dark of who they are. So they might just think, oh, I'm just like this. Like I am just that judgmental person at a party, or like I am just I don't know, lazy, aggressive, whatever.
So what are some of the, how does this show up, some of these other issues? How do they show up? Like, for instance, you explained how a fear of abandonment might show up in holding on to the wrong kinds of relationships, right? When it comes to trust, how do you think that kind of like shows up as a negative impact on people's lives? Like, I mean, maybe not trusting someone enough to be in a relationship, or not being open enough in that relationship, maybe, you know? What else do you think?
Yeah. And also like, just like not trusting can stop you from living life to the fullest. You know, it can stop you from traveling, from taking that career or job that you really want, that might serve your actual highest potential.
Right. Your world gets smaller when you get paranoid. Yeah. When you get, yeah, exactly. I see that now. When you're kind of,
and also,
I see that in terms of like your world getting smaller, and then just you're just not experiencing life to the fullest extent.
Yeah, and like not taking any risks with your life. And also it can show, not trusting people can show up in a form of judgment and like negativity towards others. They'll be like, oh no, they're doing I think they're doing this to get this, or they're doing that through a form of manipulation or something, you know, like.
So they have you just assume the worst from people. They have ulterior motives. This is good. And there's only really these three core when it comes to shadow work. There's not, they're all sort of stem from those essentially.
It stems from those, but there's a multitude of, your shadow can show up in many, many different ways. But these are the three core wounds that most people will have at least one. Cool. I don't think anyone's really not got one, really. I don't know. I mean, I'm yet to meet someone who hasn't got at least one.
Nice, interesting. So, is there any kind of parallels in other forms of psychotherapy for this kind of stuff? Like, Freud talks about, the different id, ego, superego, that kind of stuff. is there a parallel with other? Because this is a very it goes back to the roots of psychology, I think, in terms of aspects of your early relationships with your primary caregivers can be very formative for your entire life. That's essentially a big theme of psychotherapy, right?
Yeah. Well, Carl Jung sort of talked about the shadow a lot. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. So,
but shamans and people throughout history have been doing shadow work. It's not like it just came from Jung or any of those old psychologists back then. Around Freud time and stuff.
Right. So, feel it, face it. When it comes to facing it, again, it's like the idea of you get some help when you're facing it, right? It can be hard and difficult and to face this stuff alone. So seek out professional help.
Yeah, and also not to attach too many labels to yourself, and because often when you do any form of shadow work, you'll start to notice that shadow more, and sometimes you can play into that shadow more. So I would say there's a balance of how much shadow work, and that's why it's important to work with someone like a coach.
Right. And when it comes to healing it, you talk about repetition. So basically the idea of replacing that negative thought with a positive one and literally telling yourself that positive thought when it pops up, maybe in your mind.
Yeah. I mean, not just disregarding the negative, again, it's that facing it, feeling it, allowing yourself to not place judgment on it. Not be like, God, I wish I didn't have all these perfectionist issues, or I wish I trusted people. I'm an idiot for not trusting people. No, it's fine that you don't trust people. It's that's fine, but we need to look at it and then send some love to that part of you, and then think about, okay, what
do you mean by love? Do you mean send a positive, caring, self-caring vibe or message to yourself?
Yeah, or you can just literally imagine sending love in whatever visual form to yourself, but also it's sending love really to your inner child, or the child that first experienced the cause of that wound.
So, got it. So basically, you're telling yourself, you're feeling it, you're hearing it, but then you're maybe counteracting it with positivity. Am I getting it right?
Well, yeah, kind of. And it's asking a better question, what's a better, or you can ask what's good about this, and what's a more constructive way to deal with this situation that has brought up this shadow.
Right. I get it. So it's not just seeing that piece of your shadow as wholly negative, but what lesson can you learn? What's the positive? Accentuating the positive and being kind to yourself in the process.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very much.
Cool. And then would you say that you need to, if you know you have these strategies, you kind of need to prepare yourself for when these situations come up so you can actually, you're ready to go? Do you know what I mean? So if you, it might be hard because you will fall back into that old routine of this very ingrained behavior. But if you've done some work to kind of recognize that as a problem, and then you sort of say, next time when I feel this way, I'll tell myself this, and maybe have that standing by, you know what I mean? So that you can, that you're ready and prepared, I guess.
Yeah. And also just be aware that your triggers are your teachers. So like it's okay to be triggered by something, but it's the awareness, like the observer is the key, right? Like looking at yourself as if you're someone else, like looking at you. So not being so attached to your response.
So you mean looking at yourself from the outside in kind of thing? Like,
yeah, kind of, yeah. Yeah, it's like that higher self looking at you, really. Like the higher self knows, like, has got a clearer vision and knows the best for you. So it's not going to be fueled by judgment or like a high emotion.
And what's the right time to do that? Like, can you reflect in the moment, or is it more of you think you should reflect in the moment? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the more you can become an observer in life, the easier life gets. And that's why I always, teach meditation. And, a massive proponent of meditation, because it helps you become the observer. So you're not so reactive.
Got it.
Outwardly reactive. You can feel everything inside, but like if, for example, you're not an observer, someone who's not an observer is someone that would hit his girlfriend, or girlfriend hits the boyfriend, right? Vice versa, whatever. Like that's someone who's not being an observer. They are allowing their emotions to fuel their actions in a negative way.
Got it.
Whereas like an observer would be like, oh, I feel like I want to hit this person right now, but I'm not going to. I'm going to just allow those feelings to sort of pass through and then work out where that's coming from. And then again, it's like sending that love to that inner child, really, that is reacting from a place of probably not feeling good enough, and not being able to trust, or fear of abandonment.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I think that was awesome. We can leave it here. I think we've come full circle.
Yeah.